Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in here at the North Central Florida AITP chapter. Tell you a little bit about AITP, the Association of Information Technology Professionals. We are a national nonprofit organization dedicated to the ethics and professionalism in the field of IT. Now, kind of great this year. We are celebrating. We have been active for 50 years. We have various presentations and discussions related to technology and a great many topics. And if you want to stay up to date on everything that's going on in our chapter, check out our website for the latest information at AITP-NCFL or NCFL.org. And what do you say we go ahead and we are going to turn over the floor to our presenter, Chris, tonight for our presentation, 10 priorities for remote team management in a work from home world. We'll go ahead and open it up right around 7:45 and have a few Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and mute the mics until then. But welcome, Chris. Thank you for taking your time to join us, and welcome to the North Central chapter, Florida chapter of AITP.
Well, it was excellent introduction. Thanks, Wes, and good to see you. Even though just saw you shortly earlier today over at IT Pro TV. I want to welcome everybody and thank you for the privilege of getting to kind of share with you a little bit about working from home, that WFH that everybody's talking about. And a lot of times the concentration is on primarily I would say what does it look like for the end user, right? And then meantime, we forget the whole fact that, wait, I'm a boss, I'm a manager, I'm the one that actually has to, manage my team, and they're no longer, just down the hall or down a couple of floors or in the next building where I can just walk over and talk to them. Now they are all spread out, they are dispersed throughout. So just want to check real quick if you guys can just kind of either click on the raise hand or thumbs up if you can see the slides on your screen before I go too further, or thumbs up there in the window. All right, excellent. Thank you. Juan, Michael, Stephen, are you able to see it okay? Okay, cool. And Dave, thank you. Appreciate that, David. So, one thing that I have found, just kind of a little bit of background on me, if you didn't read the nice, lovely little bio that Wes put up on the website. I've been working in operations and IT, starting in the broadcast industry back in the early 90s, and then working into the world of IT and certification, Cisco, Microsoft, got a little Novell somewhere in there. Can still, I think, do Banyan Vines if you ask me really nicely, just to kind of give you a history of that. But became an instructor in the 1999, working for a virtual company called KnowledgeNet. We were one of the very first dual instructor models where we were offering live online instructor-led training. And so this idea of remote or virtual has been something that I've been working in for over 20 years as not only as a project manager, an IT operations manager, trainer in those worlds. And so, there's, certifications that go with that, but essentially one of the things that I did for quite a while was develop a training, also work with charity organizations in the UK, where I was helping to develop online schools for things like that. And so for me, this is kind of, I don't want to say my bread and butter, but it's kind of my wheelhouse. This is things that I've been doing for many, many years, back when people all said that, hey, remote is great. It's a nice, benefit if you can have an opportunity to work from home. But as a manager, you'd always hear, it's like, oh, it's so tough. I've got my folks that are here, then I got my folks that are remote, and I'm trying to bring them all together. And then that lovely thing that happened in 2020 kind of kicked it into high gear. And now we find ourselves more and more, where pretty much our team isn't anywhere near us. And so we have to manage them. We have to get the most out of them in a sense of what does it take to allow us to, still bring value to the people that we serve and work with, and yet still retain good talent. I know that we'll talk a little bit about this, about how there has been a massive shift in IT from people moving from job to job based upon the fact that, you know, now that you can work from home and now you have more and more of those options, and companies that a lot of staff members thought, well, I can never get a job there because you got to work there. Now you can. You can stay at home, you can work from there. This is kind of, I said, kind of churned up the industry just a little bit. But I think what you'll find is that there are some surprising numbers. I did a little research with Gallup and a few others that I've been tracking. And I think the numbers will surprise you a little bit, because of course we're going to always hear the outliers, right? About how either this is the best thing since sliced bread, to we're going to heck and handbasket and bring your marshmallows because you're cooking them over the fires of Hades. It's that kind of you've got that either or. And what we find actually is there's kind of a more of a middle mix that we're going to look at. And there are things that we can do though to make it more towards the, hey, this is everything, and buttering both sides of your bread for what you're doing as a manager, we would say. So is disbursement the new norm? Is this where we are going? And what we found is that countries around the world are moving in and out of lockdown. And even when we thought, okay, it's going to get a little better, then of course the news comes out, oh, there's these new variants. There is, this is the new normal. There's never going to be going back to the old way of doing things, because now after a full year of people working from home and remote, someone once said, hey, they've got a taste of what it's like. And many people really actually enjoy that. And companies have found that they haven't gone bankrupt, because there's nobody at the offices and working in there. Also, there's also these federal government versus state government mandates that here in the States anyway, that we're kind of fighting through, because if you are an organization that is a state-run organization, I know we have some UF folks here, and so obviously being a state university, there's the state government and the regulations and things that are running, and what at least at this point Governor DeSantis is saying is going to be yes or no, or but then you have the federal government. And so does your organization work with federal entities? If they do, then there's going to be certain new ways that you have to do the work, but still remain within the policies and the governance that has been set down by the federal government. And so this is confusing sometimes. And this is difficult as not only owners of businesses, but also just as managers of your IT departments. Where you have, maybe one branch or one aspect of your organization is more of a federally integrated, and then you might have the one that's more state, and then you might have one they're not either. They're just local folks. And maybe you're, working as if you're working as a consultant, or if you own your own business, these are some things that we need to, take a good look at, and take an honest look at, and not be scared to say, well, okay, wait, is this the way of the future? Are we ever going to go back to maybe a hybrid or a little bit of a mix? Is there any place for being there on premises, in an office, and working together? And I think what you'll find is that as things go by, at least from my personal opinion, and again, I don't have any insight or prognostication, where I can go, I know exactly how this is going to turn out. I don't. I've been wrong way too many times, and perhaps you have, even where you're like telling your employees or people that report to you, well, I'm pretty confident it's going to be this way, and then it's just totally not that at all. And so it's always important to just take an honest look at it and ask the question, if this is going to be the new way, what are some of the things we're going to have to do? 40% of the world population is now working from home. And that might sound like, well, that's not all that much. But remember, there are still parts of the world where they just don't have the infrastructure to work from home. Or their culture or country is based much more on a manufacturing / agricultural type of environment, where you have massive amounts of people. I can think of, third world countries that this can be. But to make a comment that 40% of the world population is now working from home, that's a huge number, because believe it or not, before 2020, those numbers were down around 20% or even lower. So that kind of shows you how big of a jump that's happened. Up to 69% of the workforce of lockdown countries. So now you move just in general in the world, but if you go to somewhere like the UK was up until recently, or go to Italy and some of these places that are under severe lockdowns, almost 70% of the people who work are working from home. So, you know, those are big numbers, and that's a big percentage, and that's something that we need to look at and go, okay, is this the new normal? Is it going to stay this way, or are we going to see perhaps maybe a shift back, or is there going to be a little bit of a backlash? And part of what I have found is that the research, and this is not just one place, you know, I'm going to mention the Gallup study here that, you know, I kind of spent a little bit of time on, but I've read a lot of studies, and a lot of the companies are saying that the backlash that you thought that might happen hasn't happened. And because of that, that means that more and more, I think we're going to see that our teams are going to be working from home, or have at least the option to work from home. And it's not going to be as big of a deal as it probably was pre-COVID. Because guess what? The numbers are going to show that it actually has been, if not at least keeping the status quo, we've actually seen, get this, a 13% increase in proficiency and efficiency. And that's across the board. In some areas, it's been even higher, and obviously in some areas, it might be a little bit lower, but overall, 13% growth in efficiency in teams. And guess what? The only thing that's changed is a lot of them are going to be working from home. So what does that look like? Some of the challenges, though, because obviously if that is the new norm, if this disbursement, your people are working from home, what is going to be some of the challenges? Well, a lot of managers are saying, look, we don't really have any sort of policy. We're kind of winging it. We're shooting from the hip here. Where, you know, obviously people are working from home, but we're still trying to figure out what does that mean and how does that look? So if you don't have a work from home policy, because things are changing so rapidly, that can be a bit of a bother, as we would say. There is a reluctance to trust. I think a lot of that comes down to the fact is either, I asked one manager this, and he says, the reason why I don't trust the fact that we can have people working from home is because if I was working from home as much as I was, I wouldn't be working. You know, I'd be surfing the net. I'd be, you know, hanging out on my back porch, you know, smoking a, you know, cigar and, you know, enjoying my time. And, you know, that just shows kind of like how they view the people that work for them, and they kind of imprint their own on there. And so there is a little bit of reluctance to trust the fact that people are still going to do the work they need to get done in the amount of time that they have and keep things going. Increased time spent on management. Believe it or not, when you can't just kind of get out of your seat, walk down the hall and check on, you know, Bill or Sue, it does take a little bit more time to put into, all right, we got to set up calls. We got to have all hands meetings. I got to do this. I got to do that. And so that can be a challenge. Increased temptation, though, to also micromanage. And this kind of ties into that whole reluctance to trust. So as you know, when someone once said, you know, you got to be all over them like drool on a baby, you know, because if you don't, I'm not really sure that things are getting done. And there is a tendency to that. Even with people that you've worked with for years and years and years, there is that hesitation to just go, I'm just going to trust that you're doing everything you need to do. And increased dissatisfaction. A lot of times that in that initial, those I call them the first days, you know, the honeymoon period of like, wow, I get to work from home. Wow, I don't have to go into the workplace. Wow, I got to do that. All of a sudden you notice something that, wait, the kids are screaming in the background, or the dogs bark in the middle of my very most important meeting with the vice president, or the provost of the school or something like that. So there's some dissatisfaction that you as managers have to deal with. Now, who really wants to work from home? Well, a lot of it has to do with where you live. Believe it or not, the average living area for per person actually has a lot to do with this. Part of the reason why we here in the States are able to kind of embrace this is because we've got a spare bedroom or we've got a work area that we can go to. Quick show of hands, how many of you have at least an office at home that you're working out of or a spare room? I know Wes is outside because he doesn't want the kids to disrupt him, but yeah, the majority, so let's say we don't have, that everybody from Wes, I think said yes. So out of the people here, so we're looking at what, almost 80% of you have a place where you can actually work from. Now let's translate that down to somewhere like Nigeria, where their average living area per person is 65 square feet. And when I first got married, I had a 500 square foot apartment, studio apartment. And I thought, wow, I was living large and in charge. Because when I lived in the UK, my house that I had that I was living in was only double that. And that was a house. And so it depends on where you're living, where can you work from home? I mean, a lot of these people, and like I said, not only from an infrastructure standpoint, but also from a do you have a space to, work from home? They got enough room for their little kitchen and probably a family of 6 or 7 sharing this one room. And so that can make a big difference in whether people want to work from home or whether they want to go back to the office. We are obviously as a country, probably the one that has the most living area per person in the world. And so for us, and that's why I'm going to be talking and working with a couple of companies that are overseas about this very topic, is that whereas here in the States, we have a workforce that is much more willing to work from home. If you're working with companies or doing work with organizations that are overseas, all of a sudden you'll probably start seeing that those numbers go down, if that makes sense. Now, the other thing to think about is that, the first part I looked at was kind of like, how do you feel as managers, and or the feedback that I've seen from studies and sampling of employers, managers, leaders, but the staff. A lot of times people are starting to feel a little bit trapped. If you think about it, when you're at home, your home is kind of the place where you went to kind of escape, or you go out in the backyard, have a barbecue. This is where you go see your family. Now you really can't leave, because even though when you're done working, you're going to spend time with your family. If you have young kids or even spouse, partner, significant other, they're not going to want you to leave. They want you to stick around. And so a lot of people feel because they work at home that they never get away from the office. They also feel isolated. If it's just them in a little office, yeah, we've got Zoom. Yeah, I can see everybody on a video call. But I think a lot of times we look at that and think, oh, well, that's where we're getting that interaction, that social interaction. But actually, physical presence, and they've studied this, and physical co-location over virtual co-location is that it's more effective if you're physically co-located. You feel less isolated when you're physically in the same space, not virtually in the whole Brady Bunch Zoom in the same space. There's also a lot more pressure. And some of this, by the way, is self-imposed. How many of you have felt like you need to do more because you're actually not at the office? Yeah, so there's more pressure. The staff start feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to do more because I'm at home. And so it's not like, you've got any of those things. And so, that's something that we look at. Yeah, Jason saying, easier to have long days. Yeah, absolutely. So these are things that we need to, think about. The pressure has increased. They get worried. If I'm not seeing my boss, except for every once in a while at a stand up or a quick company meeting, people start worrying because they see the economy has kind of been fluctuating. Maybe they've laid people off. I have a good friend who worked for Disney Corp, and here was the guy at the top of his game, he's a lighting designer and you know, creative guy, and gone. You know, his job you can't do from home. You got to be there at the parks, and then when they shut down all the parks. So a lot of people are worried, like, hey, if this keeps going, you know, am I going to get to keep my job? Cramped, you know, especially if you have a little small office. You know, typically offices or cubes are a little bit bigger at work, or you can at least, you know, step up and, you know, go meet in a big conference room. You know, there is no big conference room at home, unless it's the dining room table, and usually other family members are using it. And there is an uptick in, you know, slight uptick in depression. We'll talk about some of the numbers here from Gallup and what they're seeing. You know, you can get depressed. They are making that comment that they are seeing this. Now, it's not all bad news, okay? And as we're going to see, staff have noticed that there are benefits that they get from working from home. Obviously, less travel. Now, as somebody who traveled at one point as an instructor 44 weeks out of 52, being able to do virtual training more and more and more has always been a big thing to me. I'm not living out of my suitcase. I'm not living in a hotel. I literally, you know, I would tell friends, you know, there were times when I would wake up and I had no idea which city I was in, because all the hotel rooms pretty much look the same. And when you're just going and going and going, you know, it gets a little old. More focus on proper communication skills. Because I am not in person with you, yeah, we can pick up a little bit of verbal, you know, nonverbal and verbal and paralingual kind of thing, but you have to kind of focus in. You have to do a little bit more active listening and participate in calls to actually get more out of them. Better production means better completion of goals. If you are able to do it right, working from home, that means that there is an uptick in efficiency. And I already mentioned that they've shown that overall globally, there's a 13% increase in efficiency. So we are getting more done. As Jason kind of hinted at, though, you know, if you're at home, though, the tendency is to try to work longer, or, you know, all of a sudden you look up and it's like, oh, hey, it's time to go eat dinner just down the hall, but it's, you know, 6:30, 7 o'clock. Whereas if you were at the office, you might be able to at least leave. And so that might be something to look at. So here's what, you know, we talk about the top 10 things to help top 10 priorities for managing remote teams. So what should you prioritize? I'm going to go through the list, and each one of these I'll do a little bit more, you know, background on each one. Empathy is probably at the top of the list. Being able to understand and empathize with those people that you manage is not just, it wasn't just important back in the day where you were working with them in the same building or in the same office or the same floor. It's even more so now that they are remote, that emotional connection that needs to be there. Trust and honesty. We do need to remember that whole reluctance to trust thing that I talked about that a lot of managers have. The problem is that if you don't trust, if you're not honest with the people that you're working with, that's going to not be helpful. Micromanagement, which we mentioned, we got to watch out for that. Tool provision. Have you enabled your teams to be able to collaborate? Now, I know talking with, I was talking to a couple of you guys about the fact that there is unified communication systems. Sorry, I had to think about what we were talking about. Unified communication systems, and you know, the different tool sets that we have. Creating specific work style sheets, how I work and how I relate to other, or, you know, how I work best is something that, you know, it was something that was out there in good leadership manuals and good, you know, employee management systems. But now it's even more important how people work. What's their style of work? You know, what's their, you know, their vibe, as I used to call it. You know, these are, you know, different things. Regular meetings. Now, I'm going to talk about regular meetings. It's not that you just increase the number of meetings and then all of a sudden, hey, that's better. No, you have to have good meetings, but they do need to be regular. It's not, you know, hey, I haven't talked to somebody in, you know, a couple of weeks, I probably should check in. No, it's having regular set meetings, so that way everybody can work in harmony on those things. Objective setting. So if you start talking about objectives and key results, what is it that the team is looking for? What is the organization looking for? Lining up what your department is with the vision of the organization will then help you turn around and bring everybody along and catch that vision, or at least understand it. They might not always agree with everything about it, but at least they understand the why they're doing what they're doing. Rather important. You can talk to anybody that works in this field, talking about how to motivate people, and half of that is just answering the question why. If I'm an employee and I go to Stephen and I go, well, why are we doing it this way? If Stephen just goes, well, that's just because what we do. Yeah, okay, well, they might still go do it, but if he can say, well, we're trying to provide value for our customers. And one of the things that we have found is doing X, Y, and Z helps elevate them and helps make us better profits. All right, bada bing, bada boom, we're good. Now I know the why I'm doing that silly report, or spending time doing X, Y, and Z. So objective setting and then talking and setting the vision is important. Being open to new ideas. A lot of times, it's funny. We work in technology. If there was any group of people we would think of that would be more open or conducive, or to having new ideas, you would think it would be people in tech. You want to know something that I've found? Half the time, it's almost the opposite, because you get locked into a certain type of tech you like to use, a certain type of things you want to do. And then, the whole, PC versus Mac is a great example where it's almost a religious war between two, parties. It's like, could you be open to the idea that both are good and you could use both? No, it's this or it's that. And so it's funny, I found a lot of IT managers, they're like, well, we're on the bleeding edge of technology. We're always about new ideas. Yeah, but not just about the technology you're using, but how you use the technology. In fact, in my ITIL courses, one of the things that I talk about with everybody is, it's not about the tech. It's how you use the tech that matters. And so that's why we have to be open to new ideas on how we use things. Yeah, definitely. Ashley says, because if things don't break, don't change it. Right, because we finally got all these things to talk to each other. Don't touch anything, right? It works. So those are things that, as IT people, we can be in IT managers, we can look at. Celebration and praise. We definitely want to recognize when people accomplish things, whether it's shout outs, pats on the back, send them an Amazon card, or a Starbucks card, get some more coffee. Just recognize that, hey, Michael and his team have, taken us to the next level, and they've done it in a time of great stress and pressure, and we want to recognize that. Great job, guys. Things like that, where you actually recognize when people do things well and reward them appropriately. Celebration and praise. And then well-being. If we're working, if Skynet activated and the Terminators took over, then we don't have to worry about the well-being of our employees, right? But they're human beings. And so the well-being of the people that work for you should be something that we need to take into consideration for that. All right, so let's take a look at these in a little bit more detail, starting off with empathize. And by the way, thanks for questions that pop in. I kind of try to keep an eye on those. And Wes, if you see something that needs to be grabbed, just throw your fives up in the air there. Empathize. We need to understand that the people that are working for us, and when we're managing them, their circumstances, everybody's slightly different. Not everybody has the same type of technology. Now, because we work in a technology world, and we are, most of us as IT professionals, we typically are pretty up to speed on the latest and greatest. But if you have people that are working in your department, or your department is supporting this, not everybody is hip and up on the latest things. I really enjoyed that Michael was like, hey, by the way, did you hear about that new immersive feature in Zoom? And how many of us went, huh? What? We didn't, and we're all tech people. And so there's sometimes the technology that's out there, plus personal responsibilities. There is more to their lives than just doing their job. Most people have families of some sort, significant others, or they've got other things that they are responsible for. And so we need to find what those things are and empathize and give them some breathing space on some of these things. Pay attention to their state of mind. There are going to be days when, and this yourselves, right? That there are days when you are at the top of your game, man. You can climb Kilimanjaro and then come down and serve up breakfast to everybody, right? That's kind of how you're operating. But when you're in a bad state of mind, you're just happy that you were able to show up and get something done. That can also happen for the people that work for you, and being able to kind of pick that out and understand the people and empathize that, hey, people have bad days. That doesn't mean that they're not eligible to work from home or be remote just because they have a bad day. But you might also want to make sure that you understand what is their home life like, because if they're working at a home office, working with ACI Learning as an instructor, as well as IT Pro TV as an edutainer, we offer training to vets and people that are coming off of unemployment to become IT professionals. And so some of the people in my class that are taking it, we're talking single moms, single dads. We're talking about some vets that are struggling to keep jobs because they have massive PTSD. And so by understanding those type of things and empathizing with them, that can help us as remote managers, because they're worrying about their work. Am I going to keep a job? Oh, what kind of benefits do I have? Because you work from home, you don't have to worry about this. These are things that your staff, your employees are going to be worrying about. And these are real concerns. Now, we might not by nature look at it and go, they gotta, my dad's chief petty officer in the Navy. I was born at the Naval Academy. Suck it up, Buttercup was, the mantra of, a lot of times what I had to, work with. But even then, understanding that how somebody felt about something was important to him, even in my family. And so, when people worry about something, try to find out why they're worried about it. And if you can allay those fears and allay those as part of your communication with them, empathizing with them, and say, wow, if I was going through that, I know I wouldn't feel real happy about that. What can we do to help? Is there something, maybe have you work, more in the morning when the kids are asleep, so that way you can actually get stuff done, and that way you can cut off at lunch or something like that. Think about those things. Trust and honesty. So, remember how I said, the lack of trust was, something that a lot of managers, work with. You need to trust that your team will work. Now, some people say, well, my team needs to earn my trust. Well, the thing is, if, speaking of emotional intelligence and people picking up on vibes, your employees, your staff are going to pick up that you don't trust them. And if they feel like they're not trusted, they typically will act like people that are not trusted. It's kind of almost like you imprint that on them. And so trust that your team will work. It's not that you just, blind. I'm not talking about blind trust. It's just like if you've given them clear direction, and if you've worked with them and told them they can come to you, and if they screw up, you go to them and say, hey, I noticed this didn't come through. Is there something else that we can help you to make sure that this gets done? That's showing trust. That's showing trust. But yet be honest with them, say, this is what our expectations is. I'm going to be honest with you and just say, hey, look, we need to get X, Y, and Z done by the end of this week. Now, if you get it done by Wednesday, great. But if if you get it done by the end of, close of business Friday, great. We just can't push it to the next week. So I got to be honest with you. We got to get this done. And if you can't get it done, you're going to have to work over the weekend a little bit. Just be honest with them. Let them know what's going on. Because number one, something that's important is to recognize is you're not infallible. And let them know that. Say, look, I kiddingly tell, people that work for me, sometimes I reserve the right to be wrong, which, a lot of times I had to take that right. We can be wrong. And when you are wrong, be honest about it and say, wow, yeah, talk about, blowing that up. That was me. That's on me. Sorry about that, guys. I'm going to try to do better next time. This is a new environment, so it's okay to ask them how they like to be managed. And you know, if you think about it, when you talk with people and you're honest with them and saying, look, we're both walking together through this. This is new for me. This is new for you. So how can I be a better manager, a better leader for you? And also, how can the work environment or whatever we're doing, how can this be conducive to being efficient and getting the work done? What do we need to do? And bringing them in, that's going to, that shows that you trust them, and that shows that you're being honest with them. And the hardest one, because I do this too, is the micromanaging. First off, most of you, it sounds like, just talking to you guys during the social aspect, you've worked with your teams for a long time. You've been doing what you've been doing for a long time. So you probably know what your team does or what they're good at, right? So by knowing that, knowing what your team does, it goes back to that trust. You're going to trust that they know what they need to do, so let them do it. And let them know that, hey, if you need help, I'm here. But what can I do to remove those obstacles out of your way? It's one of the key things in agile project management and DevOps is what they call servant leadership, where most of what you do is to try to remove the obstacles so that way they can do what they need to do. Because you obviously can't do it all. That's why we have teams, right? That's why we have people that work for us and help that. So it goes back to that trust aspect. Create conditions of self-accountability. And that's where you can go and say, hey, look, one of the things that we do at IT Pro TV, and Wes knows this, is our manager, Ashley, has a little spreadsheet, and it says, hey, look, you don't have to give me exact numbers of things that you do, but can you at least go in and put down the things that you're working on and work on that? And guess what? That's a huge push for self-accountability. Because what happens is when I go in there and I notice that Wes has filled all his sheet out and he's all done, I'm like, ooh, I better get on that. I got to get this done. And so, create those type of conditions where they can hold themselves accountable, but yet at the same time, you can kind of monitor and that way you can spot when things aren't going so well, and just, in shooting up, as we call them, the signal flares. Ashley's really good at this, where she'd be like, hey, just a reminder, if you guys can just update your stuff so that way I can do my reports. And, she's not like, she doesn't pick me out because I'm usually the one that hasn't done it. It's kind of a little group thing. But yet I hold myself accountable. I'm responsible for, filling that out. But on the flip side, don't make them spend more time filling in performance metrics than actually doing the work. This is a struggle. Part of the way that we're like, well, but the only way I can track that is by making sure that they fill out all this stuff. True. There does need to be some sort of reporting mechanism or metrics that you're following. But if they are spending literally hours updating performance reports and sheets, they're not getting work done. And that's where, that micromanaging, lack of trust kind of comes in. But there is a difference between clarity and mistrust. Mistrust is where you walk in and just start lambasting somebody about, I bet you haven't done this, where's this report? What's this going on? Whereas clarity is, hey, I know I sent you an email about this, but I just want to check and make sure that you know that by Friday that we need to have this done. Is that okay? And so that way you clarify. You're being clarity. You're not saying, well, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Just say, I just want to check and make sure that, I'm communicating well enough that, this is when the deadline is. People appreciate that versus, you obviously, didn't read your email because, I don't see this stuff on my desk yet. It's, clarify and trust, and it's a balance. And by the way, in any of these things, nobody's got it flawless. Nobody's got it perfect. I know I can start slipping into that micromanaging kind of an attitude, and it's easy to do. But clarify, bring clarity, communicate. That will help you feeling like you need to micromanage, that you need to be on them on everything. Give them the tools. And again, I was talking to you guys a little bit about this with the unified communication system. Do they have some sort of collaboration tools? It's kind of hard to work from home when you have no way of really working together. So I think the nice advantage is, and hopefully you guys all bought stock in Zoom, prior to 2020. These collaboration tools out there, they're getting better and better and better. And so find the one that works best for your team. Now, is that Zoom? Is it Slack? Is it Teams? Is it, what is it? Talk with them and work with them to figure that out. If they need a webcam so that way they can actually, be on the call, get them a camera. A lot of times people are like, well, my camera doesn't work, so, I don't want to be on camera. We kind of make it mandatory that for classes that we teach is you have to have your webcam on. And if you need help getting one, we'll get you one. Give them the tools. Make sure they have a good microphone, if they have a good headset, especially if they're going to be on calls the majority of the day. Get them a nice Plantronics, soft ears, and a nice microphone that sounds good instead of that's not helpful. It's not helpful to them, and it's definitely not helpful to you. Get them the tools that they need for that, and sometimes additional monitors. Like right now, I'm at the disadvantage of I'm in my hotel room and I don't have my other monitors that I usually have at IT Pro TV, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this where I'm doing the presentation, got to see you guys, and not have everything on top? And it's a chore. I'm making it work, but having just an additional monitor so that way they can have their spreadsheet open while they're still in the Zoom meeting, and in case they need to share it or something like that, it's worth the investment. Give them the tools that they need. All right, work styles, understanding work styles. All right, said about creating a work style sheet. What you do is you want to work with them to, first off, know your staff's personality type. Everybody's different. We're not all clones. We don't all work and act the same way. Everybody is going to be different. And so by putting in these type of things of their personality, ask them to do like a work style table. This is an example of one, a real small one, and understand how to work with their style. So it's not just about, this is what I would do, but hey, this helps me if you respond to me this way. So I check emails once an hour. So if you're emailing me and going, why isn't he answered? Why isn't he answered? Why isn't he answered? I don't check my email every 5 seconds. Don't expect an email response. I like to use Zoom for meetings. So if, all of a sudden they're like, yes, we're going to go to GoToMeeting, or we're going to move to Teams only, and they're not used to it, obviously don't expect them just to instantly be able to, pop into the meetings and everything works and they're able to share their screens, and they're able to use their webcams. Give them a little bit of time to, do something. Or I don't like being interrupted when I'm concentrating. Send me an IM and I'll look up from my screen as soon as I finish the task I'm working on. By knowing and understanding kind of what their work style is. And now that's not saying that all employees can tell you how they like to work, but it does help you then to have a starting point for that conversation, saying, hey, I totally get that, but we're a help desk for the ICU. I need, you can't just be, concentrating on something and we're saying you an IM because, the core is down. That doesn't happen, so there's differences. Like sometimes there has to be a little bit of a pushback and say, well, I'll tell you what, let me meet you halfway. When you are on call for this, I need you to be able to kind of tell you what, maybe I should pull some of that other work away so that way you don't have to concentrate on that and you can concentrate on the task on hand. Would that be helpful? So again, by working and understanding their work styles, you can have that give and take. And then adjust your approach to their style. Notice I said adjust. I didn't say completely just go over to that, but make those adjustments, meet them halfway, work with them. And I think you're going to find that it's a lot better because number one, you've shown them that, hey, I want to understand how you work. and I want to give you the best opportunity to do your best. But at the same time, there might be certain expectations. The role that you're in requires this. If you don't want to be in that role, let's try to work something else out. Let's see what we can do. Regular meetings. Now, I am a meeting Nazi. I wish that meetings didn't have to exist. Oh, wait, I'm a project manager. Okay, so regular meetings, yes. You want to facilitate structured communication. So basically, having a set amount of meetings for a certain amount of time and make them particular. And what I mean by that, that means have an agenda, stick to it. If you need to have more of a one-on-one, stick a pin in it and say, hey, can I meet with you offline and we'll take care of it, but we don't want to disrupt the rest of the meeting. The more time spent in meetings, the less time people are actually going to do their work. We just did a half-hour meeting that could have been done in 10 minutes. That's 20 minutes where I don't get to do what I need to do. Set the timelines and stick to them, which I'm going to do here. I've kind of gone over it a little bit. Ask if they need help with data. If they need the data to be there, in other words, I got to respond. So let's say that, Michael's working, we'll just say with Wes on something, and Wes is like, I'm supposed to do this presentation and I don't know where to go. Where do I go find this stuff? Well, do you need help with that? I can go grab that for you. Maybe I can process it and analyze it a little bit before I hand it off to you. That might help in meetings. And be open to new ideas. Your customers are obviously changing their work habits too. And we would say that the general population are aware that, guess what, there's a pandemic happening. And that more people are working from home because they're probably working from home. So they get that. And so let's try something new. Let's work on something. This could be the best time to launch these new initiatives, to try new things, try new systems or use a new collaboration platform. Encourage those flexible work styles, where as long as the work gets done by the end of the week or by the end of the day. Hey, if you want to take 4 hours off in the middle of the day to have a long lunch and take a nap, but you're still getting everything done by close of business, I'm okay with that. Be open to that. Standards should apply to the outcome, not the method. So that's where, hey, the data still needs to be there. The report still needs to be there. The work still needs to be done. That's standardized, but the methods can be a little bit more flexible. As long, and I understand sometimes we work in areas of high regulation and high governance, and so we have to be careful about what we do. But if the methods can be changed, that's great. Finally, objective settings. Adjust the objectives and targets based upon the fact that this is a new realm, this is a new environment. And so the objectives that we had for in-person aren't going to always match, or the targets that you're setting. Continue to use SMART targets, if you guys are familiar with those: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Use those and just adjust accordingly. Use objectives and key results, OKRs. It's kind of like, I call it the new fancy KPIs. Objectives and key results are basically, once you've set the objectives, what will be the key results to show that you've met those objectives? Kind of like critical success factors, things like that. No matter what term you use, set those and make those work. And don't forget to celebrate and reward achievements. That could be, again, getting to work from home, which we've already talked about, and making that permanent. You got money, you've got swag, you've got meals, give a trophy to the team, employee. Now that the nice thing is that getting to eat out now has opened up, where we can actually maybe get together, maybe at an outdoor location, get the teams like, man, we haven't seen everybody together in one place. Next Friday after work, meet over at this restaurant. They have an outdoor seating. I'm going to reserve the whole thing for us. We're going to get together and just have a good time. Might be thing. Give away some tickets or online experiences. All the things that you would think about where you celebrate and reward achievements. You just have to be a little bit more innovative. It used to be, I put this one in, the free parking space, right? Hey, you get good reserved parking. Yeah, in front of my house. I already got that. It's called my driveway. So, these are things that we would look at and want to do. And I would be remiss to not talk about wellness. Ensure that they do take breaks. And this is where you can be, remember, empathize with them and say, look, hey, stand up, go outside, take a walk. Even if you just put, change your status. A lot of people forget that there is a status setting on most of these teams or, anything where it says what you're doing. Have one go and taking a break and, turn that on and then just be, put maybe a sticky on your, side of your monitor saying, don't forget to change status, so that way you come back and you're there. Adjust their hours for their comfort. Again, methods, time, as long as they're hitting their objectives, make sure that you adjust their hours, especially if they have to drop their kids off and pick them up after school. Allow them to maybe start a little earlier, take a break for a couple hours to go do the whole kid run, come back and work, take another break around 3 to go pick up the kids, and then work another hour or two. Adjust it. And then spot the warning signs of burnout. This is typically when you'll notice that they start missing meetings. You hear scuttlebutt that, Wes isn't too happy. He was, yelling at somebody in the hallway the other day. And it's like, that's Wes isn't that way. I mean, he's probably about the friendliest guy you'll ever meet. For him to start doing that, it sounds like there's a lot of pressure. So if you're ready to readjust, well, I want to give you some results here and end with this. And by the way, I'll stay a little bit longer if you guys want to take questions for like this. So, one of the things that we found was that Gallup did a study, started at the end of March 2020, and they did a resample literally just 2 weeks ago. And so I got the data. And when it comes to things like loneliness, it says 23% said they felt really lonely. Guess what? The number was this last couple of weeks, the same, 23%. How many people were stressed? Guess what? Also stayed fairly steady. There's a slight uptick, but it's pretty steady. My opinion is with social media, good, bad, or indifferent, people have learned how to reach out and connect. And depression has seen a slight uptick. It's true, and it's something that we need to consider. Being isolated, we have those introverts that, ooh, I don't have to be around people, woohoo, they're all happy. But for the most part, people want to be around people. The speed of depression, some of that is where they live. Urban cities with severe lockdowns versus maybe a rural environment or a smaller city. Gainesville would not probably have the same depression numbers as a New York City or a Chicago, or Miami or something like that. So you see that. So according to Gallup in March of last year, 78 to 80% of respondents said that their lives were disrupted. And anyone want to know what that is 2 weeks ago? The same. No, it's interesting. Listen, however, because businesses are adjusting to the new norm, managers are working harder at connecting. 60% were worried about everything back in March of 2020. March 2021, down to 43%. Stressed, more than usual, 62% in March of 2020, down to 45%. So here's the, what is the common thread there? As people get better at managing people that are in these situations, that's when you start seeing that come down. We get to kind of lift their burdens. We can kind of, take some of that load off of them as managers, and that's important. And so, and I already told you that, hey, one of the funny things is that as businesses are adjusting to the new thing, here's that magic number that I told you about. Remote managers are seeing a 13% increase in personal productivity. But a lot of it has to do with how well they are managing their teams. 9% was from working more minutes per shift, fewer breaks, fewer that, we get that. But at the same time, you are seeing that productivity number rise, which is, how we measure. And online businesses, obviously, hello, they're seeing a sharp upturn in growth. I mean, just when we thought Amazon couldn't get any bigger, right? That is increased. Uber at first got major hit, but then what did they do? Uber Eats, DoorDash, some of these that have adjusted. they've been able to kind of turn that around. So good news, managing your team remotely, if you consider a few things that I've shared with you, prioritize some of those things, those top 10 priorities, I think you're going to find that things can work. So want to turn it back over to Wes and any questions you guys might have. And, since we have some.
All right. I'm going to allow everybody, if you have any questions. Chris, thank you very much for spending your time with us. And, what a great presentation. But I'm going to go ahead. You all can unmute yourself. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and chime in. All right, we got one from David here. I'll go ahead and so we have it in the recording. It says, is there any difference in performance if they use chat versus email?
So are you asking versus or both?
In productivity, it says or.
Okay.
Yep.
Versus.
Well, now we've got versus. Yep.
Okay, so versus. What they've found is, and this is something that I think Microsoft did a little bit of work on, because obviously with Teams and the whole integration with Exchange and everything, that chat tends to work and create better productivity. And the reason why, instantaneous answers. Email, it does take a second. Now, what they have found is it also depends on what it is you're trying to communicate. If it's, I just need a quick number, I just need to know, hey, is the meeting at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock? Chat is more efficient and more productive. If I need to break down a bullet list of a few things that I need from you, email is going to be a better option. But overall, what they find is that people are doing a lot more, almost, I call it virtual prairie dogging. You guys know what prairie dogging is, right? Working in the cube farms, where if the guy you need to talk to is like 2 cubes over, and you pop your head up and go, hey, Steven, hey, do you have those numbers yet? And Steven's head would pop up, prairie dogging, yep. Well, chat is like virtual prairie dogging, hey, you got that? Or above, you got that? And so what they found, I think it depends on what it is you're trying to look at, but overall they say that the chat seems to be helpful. And the nice thing is with Teams, it has the chat history that takes it. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, it's a great link.
All right, David, great question. Any other questions?
Yeah, Chris, has any study been done or any investigation into whether a hybrid model, such as working in the office Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and working from home Tuesdays and Thursdays, has more or less benefits than 100% of working from home or working from the office?
Yeah, let me look here. I want to see if I have it close by. 1 second here. Yeah, one of them is, where'd it go? I think it's the Microsoft one that I have here. Let me copy the link and put it in here. There's a little bit of information in this article right here. The future work, good, challenging, and unknown, where I think they talk a little bit about that. And then the other is this Tech Republic article. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys some of the, these are links to some of the research that I've done. And also I grabbed a few. In fairness, I have to give, to be honest with you, Sarah Lichtenstein from IT Pro TV, our marketing teams and stuff have been doing a lot of research on this as well. So, and then here is the Cisco article. So I'm giving you some Microsoft, I'm giving you some Cisco. And so I think you'll find some good links in there. The Gallup, unfortunately, is behind a paywall. And otherwise I would have given you a link to that. But they have a couple of articles talking about how are we going back? Are we ever going to go all the way back? And almost all the articles say no, but to help people that are struggling in a virtual world where they really need that connectivity with like actual human beings in the same room, we need that. That if you can do that, if it's possible, that can actually be a best of both worlds, Michael. By the way, did I post that to everybody or to just Wes? Just make sure. Okay, good.
I can see.
Okay.
Well, if no one else has one, I'll ask another one. Has there been any or research, or what is your thoughts about a team that tends to necessarily be vertical? In other words, you have just a couple people, or say you've got 14 or 15 people in an office, and there necessarily has to be 4 or 5 levels of management in there. Is that kind of a situation going to be a little harder to work with, or a little easier, or it all depends on communication, or what?
That is where the secret of common vision, where whoever's in the upper top echelons need to make sure that they are very clear in their directives and their communication down as it goes through, because it doesn't have a chance, like you said, it doesn't have a chance to kind of splash down into a larger team that can handle things. The other aspect of that, and this is just a personal opinion in working in, and if you've ever worked in like a software development team, like an agile or a scrum, development, you'll notice that it's very flat and it's a small team, right? You've got the scrum master, you've got the product owner, and then everybody else is on the team, and there is no real hierarchy. And one of the big secrets to that is, of course, that whole collaborative open space, everybody's working together. Well, think about when you reverse that and now you make it like this. As I like to say, guess what? Communicate, as I said, you're just turning it kind of up here. What still needs to happen up and down?
Communication, yeah.
Communication. Setting up good communication, setting up a good RACI chart on roles and who's accountable for what at what levels will be key to success. As we used to say, know your role. Well, The Rock used to say, know your role and shut your mouth, but that's not what we want to do here. It's definitely, knowing what is required and what I need to do, and that needs to be communicated clearly up and down. So that way somebody way up here doesn't have unnecessary expectations of somebody at level 6. Yeah. Oh, you're welcome, Angeli. Steve, what is the worst loss as a result of the trend to remote work versus the old normal? Are synergies and serendipity lost as a result? So how can that be overcome? And how does esprit de corps or morale get affected? Wow, that's talk about the elephant in the room, right? What you find is that we live in a world where it depends on what generation you are. Now, I'll just be blunt. Are you a boomer?
I've blown up a long time ago.
Yeah. As we like to say, you're Gen Z, you're millennials. This is nothing. Why? Because they don't know a time without the internet. They don't know a time when they didn't have the sum total knowledge of all mankind in their hands. They don't, so for them, it's just kind of a, well, I'm not getting to, quote, hang with people out at work. So they kind of adapt a little faster. Okay. However, what you find is that they've also grown up with a massive amount of change in technology where, things are rapidly changing. Gen Xers like me are going to be probably close to that, but we also remember a time when, we didn't have all this, where, when I started working in radio and television and broadcasting, I used to run the bulletin board for the Commodore users group. And we had two 9600 baud modems. And we beat out IBM, they had their user group and, we were cooler than them, but I mean, that, that's the environment that I grew up in and developed. So I think that you find is that the morale definitely adjusts when you start getting into the older generations. They seem to be more affected by the fact that I don't literally get to come to work and go to the coffee pot, and as I'm pouring my coffee, we're sharing, us. So one of the things that you do, and I like Jason talking about virtual lunch and learns and innovation talks and things like that, is it's good to have some sort of thing that is unwork related where the social interaction can happen. And the more that you do that, I think the better.
All right. Any other questions?
It's more of an observation. I had a boss at one time who thought that it was just interesting that they would never take a person out of management and sit him down, who had no technical skills, and sit him down and say, today you're a coder, without sending him, to school and training and giving him practice and everything else. But they think nothing in the world about taking a coder who's never had any managerial responsibility in the world and giving him a promotion and saying, you are now a manager, and without sending him for training or practice or anything else. So anybody who came up through that rank is probably had to scramble to learn not only the basics, but is maybe even more lost in the pandemic world than other people.
Yeah, the combination of tech and then how to manage a new world. And I can, I resemble the remark about the, being the coder, learning how to manage. I was the young punk kid that I knew the technology. So all of a sudden I'm beginning, at age 21, I was the operations manager of 2 radio stations. Everybody in that radio station were twice my age. And now I'm the boss. And I never went to management school. I didn't do anything. Mine was just do your job. Why are you whining? So I didn't last very long because I didn't have the management skills. And even as a project manager, I found that, hey, the technical side of things and the managing and, making sure that all the work gets done and then running the report is up, no problem. But when I started having to deal with the people side of things, I found more and more, I got to learn this stuff. I got to learn how to be a better manager. I didn't think of myself as a bad person, and I probably wasn't, but it's different, as you all know, if you manage people. And so, yeah, definitely.
Real quick, I'm hoping that with, coming out of this, I'm hoping that some organizations now are seeing the light, maybe more open and maybe less resistant. I know there are some organizations that are still resistant to work from home, because of like what you mentioned about trust and that sort of thing. But, it's one of the things there's in terms of competing for a workforce, there's going to be some expectations of people that to have that flexibility. I mean, I know for myself, as much as an introvert as I am, I actually do like going into the office and seeing people, but I like my schedule. I've had, I work, as I mentioned previously, 4/10s, and I've had that schedule for 12 years. 11 going on 12 years now. And no matter where I've been at UF, and I know, I know in certain places of the organization that would not be acceptable. I know in the hospital that would not be acceptable, just from a, I think some people see that as a fairness kind of thing, and where some people just don't have that option, to work from home, especially if they're a technician and they have to actually physically get their hands and touch things. But as I've told my colleagues in the past, I mean, especially when I manage stuff in the data center, I mean, if we're engineers, we are working remote, because all of our stuff lives in the data center now in the cloud. So technically, I mean, I can work from anywhere as long as I have my laptop, and so you kind of, as I mentioned, as I chatted before, you kind of need to have somebody to champion that and cheerlead that effort. I mean, and because I've been working in the area of unified communications, whether it was VoiceCon or Enterprise Connect, you know, they've always talked about that and this coming idea of digital transformation. And then now look, you know, we've had basically 5 years of digital transformation happen, or 10 years of worth of digital transformation happen in the last year, you know, year and a half. So.
Yeah. And by the way, IT Pro TV, we're going to be doing a webinar on that on June 3rd, digital transformation, just a little plug there. I'm going to have Mark Bradley, who wrote the one of the authors of the digital and IT strategy book from ITIL, is going to be my guest. And then Leslie Landry, who runs Aspen Consulting and Technology. And so she's going to talk about being as a manager and as a consultant, working with companies and helping them through digital transformation. So good stuff.
It's funny because, you know, every time you go to a conference, they would talk about it and you get the eye roll kind of thing. But then COVID hit, and now it's kind of like organizations that had gone through that process, they were a lot better positioned or well positioned than it. And then for the ones that weren't, they had to force themselves into that, you know, and quickly spend and you know, and then next thing you know, there's a shortage on webcams, you know.
Oh yes, oh yes.
All right. Are there any questions for our presenter here, Mr. Ward?
Just thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Absolutely. We appreciate it, Chris, for you joining us. And for those of you that are maybe catching us on the recording, we encourage you to come to our website, AITP-NCFL.org, and you can find out all of the events. You can join us in person if you like, and we appreciate having everybody here. And thank you for joining us this evening.